also speaking in favor and in opposition. Mr. Spigelman.
Marnin Spigelman, 11816 Harvard Lane, Carmel. As the previous speaker said, a lot of the issues tonight are intermingled with each other, specifically those which you mentioned on my card, the food and beverage, the CRC monitoring, as well as the budget. But before I get into that, I wanted to make a comment which sort of was disturbing to me. And that comment involves early last week, I sent a memo to Mrs. Snyder asking her if she would allow me to make a comment at the finance meeting, which was held this past week on Thursday. She responded to me in this way. She said, "I thank you for writing, but we do not allow comments from the public at a working committee meeting." I don't know why she referred to herself as we, but I do know this, that in the past, and because of the courtesy of Mr. Seidensticker, who was running that finance meeting, I was allowed to speak. I was recently at a utilities committee, and Mr. Griffiths allowed speech at that meeting. And in point of actual fact, Mr. Sharp, in the past when he was a chairman of a committee, allowed speech. But Mrs. Snyder does not allow speech. Now, when I campaigned for Mrs. Snyder back in 2007, and when I was knocking on doors and encouraging people to vote for her, for which she ended up winning by 26 votes, her campaign slogan was that she would listen to the voice of the people. And I asked Mrs. Snyder if that campaign slogan only means if the people are not allowed to talk. I would hope that in the future she would change this policy to comply with the other committee chairmen, with the exception of, I suppose, Mr. Carter, who also doesn't allow speech. Second thing, and I will tell Mr. President Sharp that though I have a few things to say, I promise you that after spending 7 hours listening to the May 2005 Performing Arts Center Bond Council meetings, I will never even get close to having a record of the longest remonstrance in Carmel history. A couple of things that I have to relate to was comment by Mr. Sharp, as a matter of fact, on his Facebook. And that comment involved the CRC, where he called for, what do they call it when the only reason you appear successful is through a constant infusion of fresh cash, and he called his answer was a Ponzi scheme. Mr. Sharp, a Ponzi scheme is not what is happening with the CRC. Why? Because by definition, a Ponzi scheme pays back original investors from future infusions of cash. I can guarantee you that will never happen to the taxpayers of Carmel. And also, in a Ponzi scheme, the perpetrators of such a scheme generally take funds into their own pockets, and I would hardly think that members of the CRC do that. So I would think probably a better term you could have used was jugglery, which is a manipulation to achieve a result, which is exactly what the CRC has been doing for years. And another comment which also intermingles with all of this is Mr. Asaturo's comment in the last council meeting talking about the budget, when he said that since the mayor doesn't want to give us cuts in his budget, he wants to make the council be the bad guys. And so I wondered about all of this, and it sort of motivated me to look back into the history of Carmel and this council. And wouldn't you know it, I picked on the May 2005 Performing Arts Center council meetings. And when it comes to a definition of who the bad guys are. Because you see, I don't think, Mr. Asatoro, it is correct to wholly throw the blame on Mayor Brainerd for being the bad guy. In fact, the council is just as bad. And why? Because throughout the years, you all have been pulling out your ink felt pads and slamming your rubber stamp down for most of what Mayor Brainerd has thrown at you. But in 2005 is a perfect example that coordinates the bad guy theory and CRC monitoring. Why the CRC monitoring? Because in your ordinance you say no council members should be part of the CRC. I want to tell you, I fully support that ordinance. And if not for one vote, I'm sure, who would not allow the rules to be suspended and that voted on immediately tonight, that's what I would prefer to see happen because it is a righteous ordinance. The mayor said to Mr. Sikich in his article in the Indy Star that state law does not allow the council to tamper with his appointments. However, I believe that you're correct in putting that into the ordinance because according to IC 36.7, 14-10, it talks of commissioners who may have pecuniary interests in the districts that the TIFs are located. Now, pecuniary interests could also involve owning land, owning property, or having a vote in a specific TIF district that allows certain improvements that that person might have benefit in the long term, such as the case, obviously, with one member that was appointed by the mayor. And as far as the council members are concerned, going back again to May 2005 is a perfect example. Why? Because during that time, since time began with the CRC, two council members not only voted in the CRC for all proposals, but also represented a 50% vote in council from a minimum required 4 votes to get an ordinance passed. This is a gross